There was something Robert Meyer Burnett said of modern Star Trek that I believe applies to the TV series Secret Invasion, which I've been watching for the past few weeks. Robert said that on Star Trek Picard, specifically its first 2 seasons, and on Star Trek Discovery, that life had become cheap, and I think it's true. Whether it was the character of Connolly, who was suddenly killed by an asteroid while he was toxically mansplaining to Michael Burnham, whether it was the character of Edward, who was killed by tribbles for laughs, and his captain called him an idiot, or all the ex-Borgs killed in Season 1 of Picard, or Icheb's brutal and graphic murder, 7 of 9 killing a woman in cold blood, life had indeed become cheap in the world of Star Trek. The same is true of Secret Invasion. There have been a number of characters murdered, I think largely for shock value, and to raise the stakes and make the audience believe that no one is safe, any character could die. The trouble is, it doesn't generate that kind of emotional impact. Instead, the character deaths in this series just come across as depressing, gratuitous, and unnecessary. In the first episode, longtime character Maria Hill was shot dead. In episode 4, Talos, the only real likeable character on the show, was brutally killed by main villain Gravik. In episode 5, Gravik brutally kills several Skrulls, including his main henchman, and a young Skrull character introduced in the first episode. Sonya Falsworth cut a Skrull's finger off in a previous episode, and this week she shoots a Skrull square in the head in another graphic murder. None of these deaths were heroic or meaningful, just pointless. There's something truly soulless about this show, right down to the AI-generated artwork of the opening credits, which for those of you who aren't aware, I'm not exaggerating. An AI was used to generate these images that you're seeing on screen, which is why they look like AI art. To add insult to injury regarding the cheap, overly violent deaths, Talos' death is perhaps the worst of all because he was a major character and he had a long-standing issue with his daughter Gaia. And now, because he's dead, that relationship issue isn't going to get resolved. But to make matters worse, she doesn't really seem all that cut up about her father's death. She sort of just shrugs it off. She has a funeral for him with the help of Fury's wife, and that's it. She doesn't really mourn him to any great degree. Typically, a tried and tested character development story arc is for a person to be changed for the better or inspired and filled with a determination or sense of conviction and duty towards a person following their death, and especially if it's a person who they didn't get to resolve their differences with. They might feel that they need to keep the dead person's legacy alive by continuing their work, for example, or finishing something they started. Sometimes they're motivated by guilt. The person's death often helps the character to learn something about themselves. That doesn't happen here. Gaia doesn't learn a single thing. After 5 episodes, I don't know anything about Gaia, other than the fact that she was Talos' daughter. I don't know what she wants. I don't know what drives her. I don't know why she's doing what she's doing, or even why she had a falling out with her father in the first place. And it doesn't seem like the writers know what to do with her either. It's as if this character has nothing to learn, and therefore there's not much to learn about her. Talos was an interesting character, with some degree of depth, and ironically enough, he probably had the most amount of humanity of any character on the show, despite being an alien. But Gaia is lifeless, sullen, broody, and uninteresting. Later in this episode, Nick Fury makes this ridiculous speech about how they can't keep relying on superheroes to save them, despite the fact that the threat posed to Earth is so utterly existential that it warrants the help of superheroes that he has access to. I mean, literally, Gravik is trying to create Super Skrulls using DNA from the Avengers that was left behind in the final battle from Endgame, which this show feels very divorced from in tone and everything about it. Anyway, he says the only power I have was planted between my ears by a single mother and wrapped around my finger by a woman far greater than I could ever hope to be. So more feminist agenda, female empowerment messaging there. Of course we are shaped by our parents, including our mothers, but that's not all we are. We are also shaped by our fathers. But Hollywood likes to downplay the role of men and fathers. which I suspect is the reason Talos got an unceremonious funeral thrown on a fire with an apathetic daughter looking over his dead body, not really mourning him at all. It felt like Talos was sort of disposable. What's more, as for Fury's line about his wife being greater than he could ever be or whatever, why does Fury think so little of himself? One of the most difficult aspects of watching this garbage series has been having to endure Fury being demeaned and insulted on a constant basis. This is despite all of his achievements over the years. Now here he is putting himself down, and I still don't know anything of any significance about his Skrull wife Vara. What exactly has she done for us the audience to believe that she's so amazing? Fury concludes his self-flagellating rant saying, "If that ain't enough, maybe I am just dust." What? And Sonya Falsworth makes absolutely no attempt to defend him or pick him up. I think more than anything, the show is just not enjoyable in any way. It's an unpleasant watch, filled with unpleasant characters, being unpleasant to each other in unpleasant situations. The villain's motivations make no sense, and neither does the protagonist's loss of faith in himself and belief in his own abilities. Like the previous episode, this one is fairly short at 36 minutes. I'm assuming the final episode next week will be a good deal longer. The show is so lacking in any kind of fun, levity, heart and humanity that if you told me that the show had been written by an AI, I would believe you. Another thing I can't quite understand is where the budget for this show has gone. Apparently it's cost $212 million to make. So far this season we've had a couple of big action scenes and a few explosions, some decent de-aging CGI, I'll give you that, and mostly just a bunch of long talking expositionary scenes. I suppose most of the money could have gone to the actors: Samuel L. Jackson, Olivia Colman, Emilia Clarke, Ben Mendelsohn, Don Cheadle. I mean, they're fairly big names, so they wouldn't be cheap, but it's just hard to see $212 million on screen, at least from these first 5 episodes. By no means does the show look low budget, but it clearly doesn't look expensive. There's no point in me doing a plot breakdown review for this episode. The only thing you need to know is that Fury is now wearing his eye patch again, and he's off to confront Gravik with a vial of Avengers DNA called the Harvest. There's not much to talk about here. When I started reviewing this Secret Invasion series, I thought to myself, okay, it's 6 episodes, 6 weeks, no big deal. A small commitment of my time. I watch it, I make a review video. But I was not prepared for how underwhelming and depressing this series is. Honestly, at this point, I have only a morbid curiosity about how the show is going to end next week. And whether it ends well or whether it ends badly, there will of course be one obvious major positive. At least the show will be over. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the like button and all that good stuff. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. The Dave Cullen Show is made possible by you, my generous subscribers. If you'd like to support my work, head on over to my Subscribe star, linked below in the description box, and for a pledge of as little as $1 per month, you can help to keep the show going. I'm also doing one-to-one monthly subscriber chats. Thanks again. Take care.